3 dead bodies were found stuffed into this hollowed out tree in the middle of the woods in 2010. And when it came to who the murderer was, truth is stranger than fiction. This is Matthew Hoffman, and in November of 2010, he murdered 3 people and kidnapped a 13-year-old girl who he held hostage for days. On November 9th, 2010, Matthew went into the woods and spent the night camping. Then the next morning, on November 10th, he decided to wake up and break into the home of Tina Herman. So unfortunately that day, when Tina Herman returned to her house, Matthew Hoffman had broken in. And as soon as he saw her, he freaked out, dragged her into a bedroom, and stabbed her multiple times with a hunting knife, killing her. But what Matthew didn't know was that Tina's friend Stephanie was coming over to meet her that morning. And while Matthew was dealing with Tina and her dead body, Stephanie entered the residence. Matthew freaked out. He stabbed Stephanie a number of times with the same hunting knife, even continuing to stab her after she was dead. And hearing all of this, the family's dog started to bark violently, and Matthew then stabbed and killed the family dog as well. After this, he dragged both of the women's bodies into the bathroom, dismembered them in the tub along with the body of the dog, and stuffed the body parts into trash bags. Shortly after finishing the dismemberment process, though, Tina's 2 children, Cody and Sarah, arrived home from school. Immediately after walking into their house, Matthew stabbed Cody in the back of the head, killing him instantly, then chased Sarah up into her room where he bound and gagged her with a cord from a fan in her room. So after dismembering Cody's body and stuffing him into a trash bag as well, Matthew brought out the 3 bodies that he had chopped up and placed into garbage bags, stored them in his car, and then brought out Sarah, who was still alive. After this, he brought Sarah and the bodies of Tina, Stephanie, and Cody back to his own house, where he kept Tina locked in a crawl space. And this is where the story gets really weird. So Matthew Hoffman was a self-professed tree lover, and his entire home was covered in leaves. I'm talking about piles of leaves, bags of leaves nailed to the walls. And apparently, according to his neighbors at the time, Matthew had exhibited some really strange behavior prior to the murders. He had apparently been trapping squirrels in his backyard, killing them and grilling them. He allegedly spent hours sitting up in the trees in his backyard, just staring at the other trees and watching squirrels. And for a while, he had actually worked as a professional tree trimmer. But let's get back to the story. So after bringing Sarah back to his house, along with the bodies of the other people he had killed, he locked her in a bathroom and even tied himself to her and took a nap. Afterwards, he headed back to the crime scene, did some cleanup, and then eventually brought Sarah into a crawl space, which was once again covered in leaves, dark and damp. And while she was chained up and held hostage inside of this crawl space, for days he visited her regularly and would SA her. Keep in mind, at the time, Sarah was only 13 years old, and her mom, her brother, and her family friend had been murdered right in front of her. Finally, though, a few days later, Matthew was arrested after police found him parked in his own car right next to the abandoned car of one of his victims. Tina, Coda, Sarah, and Stephanie had been missing for days now, so the police obviously went and searched Matthew's house, and that's when they made the gruesome discovery of Sarah chained up in the crawl space. This is an actual photo that the police released eventually of Sarah exactly as they found her. They actually had to take these photos for evidence before they released her, and they obviously immediately arrested Matthew. So for a while after his arrest, Matthew would not release the location of the bodies to the police. They were desperately trying to find the bodies of those people that he had killed, but he wouldn't tell them anything. That is, until they took the death penalty off the table, and that's when he revealed that he had stuffed the 3 corpses into a hollowed out tree in the middle of the woods. Police immediately then went and found the tree, and inside they found the bodies of Cody, Stephanie, and Tina in those trash bags, dismembered. Eventually, the tree was torn down, but I mean, how bizarre is this story? Eventually, Matthew Hoffman was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and this whole story is just kind of mind-blowing. He's been nicknamed the Leaf Killer for doing the things that he did, for his obsession with leaves, the way that he placed the bodies inside of a hollowed-out tree trunk. I've never really heard a story like this, and I hope to never hear one like this again.